It's time now to look ahead to see what the future has in store. If Barack Obama is reelected to a second term, what should be his priorities? And if Mitt Romney wins, how will his presidency affect the United States? Well, let's listen to what both candidates have been saying on the campaign trail.
I've got a plan that will actually create jobs, not just talk about creating jobs. A plan that will actually create middle-class security. I want to make it a national mission to educate our young people, to train our workers. I want to recruit 100,000 math and science teachers. We got to step it up when it comes to math and science and technology.
We need taxes and regulations and healthcare policies and environmental policies all to come together in such a way that we make it America the best place in the world for small business, so we can create more jobs and more take-home pay for the American worker. I commit that we'll build stronger families and a stronger economy and maintain a military so strong no one would ever think of testing it. We'll keep this nation the hope of the earth.
To help us gaze into the crystal ball is Republican strategist Jack Burkman. He's also the founder and president of the Washington, D.C.-based political consulting firm Burkman Associates. Also with me, Democratic media analyst Ryan Clayton. He's the founder of 100 Proof Politics, a news and blog website. I want to welcome both of you to the heat. Jack, I'm going to give you a first crack at this. Okay, let's say things shake out your candidate's way on Tuesday, and Mitt Romney becomes the next president of the United States. What will his priorities be, or what should they be?
Well, I think the first thing you'll have is a lot less debt and getting the country out of debt. I mean, I wouldn't blame Obama for the recession, but what I do blame him for is racking up $3.7 trillion in money and debt that didn't need to be spent. First thing Romney will do is get the country out of debt. Second thing he'll do is stop these agencies from dumping money out. I mean, have you seen what the Department of Energy is doing? Billions, tens of billions of dollars, and all of these bankruptcies with things like Solyndra. It's even going on today in the wake of these bankruptcies. It's not just them. There's 6 or 7 agencies, EPA, Ag, you name it, all over the place. The U.S. government is spewing out money. That'll stop. Third thing is he's got to overturn health care, and I think if we get the Senate, even if we don't have 60 votes in the Senate, if we get the Senate, I think we can do that. So mainly that.
Okay, Ron, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, I mean, that's just silly talk. You know, first of all, Mitt Romney is not going to win this campaign. But if he did win the presidency, what he'd do is roll back regulation on the banks that crashed our economy. He'd, end Medicare as we know it. And then he'd make the middle class pay for more trickle-down tax cuts and more costly corporate loopholes.
We've got to cover a lot of topics. So let me move on. You say he's going to cut the spending, kind of rein things in. And yet one of the things he's talked about is increasing the spending for defense. And there are some that say if you add up 10 of the number 2 through 12, that's not even the same amount as the United States spends. Well, some say even 14. So can the United States continue to spend and spend and spend on defense?
Pentagon's in trouble. I mean, if you look at the Navy, George Will just had a column, the Navy is down, heading under 300 ships. We won't be able to have the dominance we have in the Pacific. I mean, nobody knows what the repercussions could be. You could have a resurgent China, an aggressive China. The United States is left so weak. We're left so weak in places like East Asia, you could have China or even Russia get back into the game.
But the question is, can the United States maintain that kind of spending?
Oh, sure. If you get rid of Obama's...
But you're talking about the deficit spiraling out of control.
Well, but we're going to save money by getting rid of Obama's health plan. You take all that off the table, you have a lot of money to work with. I mean, think of all the money that's wasted. I mean, Ryan talks about saving money. Do you know they spent, with the stroke of a pen, $1 trillion on a stimulus, 800 billion of which went to pay down state debts. It was a bribe to the unions in the United States to take care of public workers. I mean, that was insane. $800 billion.
And your friends on Wall Street, they got bailed out to the tune of $1 trillion too.
Hold on, guys. Let's stay on defense. Can the United States maintain spending this kind of rapid pace that Romney's talking about on defense?
I know what we can't do. We can't trust Mitt Romney and the Republicans to protect this country, because the last time we were attacked, the worst time we were attacked since Pearl Harbor, happened on a Republican president's watch.
6 months into the term.
And under President Obama, we found the people that did that, and we brought them to justice. So I think clearly the case can be made now that the people that are more to be trusted in preserving our interest and protecting our country are the Democrats and President Obama.
Obama has screwed up, well, foreign policy here, an international channel. Mideast policy, if you want to get into foreign policy, I guess he opened the door, I'll walk through. Mideast policy, I'm sure we can all agree on this, is about as screwed up as it's ever been, and it's about as badly screwed up as it could possibly be.
And why do you say that?
Well, Mubarak and Gaddafi, they were two functioning, reliable allies of the United States. I mean, Gaddafi had been crazy in his youth, but he was helping in the last 10 years enormously for the U.S. to fight the war on terror. Ryan knows that.
Wait, I just want to get this straight. You're pro-Mubarak and you're pro-Gaddafi, dictators who abuse their own populations. You're going to come out in favor of them?
Wait a minute.
That's sick.
We invested $30 billion.
That's silly talk. That's sick.
We invested $30 billion in Mubarak. All that money is now down the drain.
Well, maybe we should learn not to invest in dictatorships.
You now have, well, Bill Clinton did too. You now have an Islamic Brotherhood government in Egypt.
That's democratically elected.
You could have a,
well,
it's democratically elected, but it could turn into Iran.
But he's making a point there. That's one of the things that the United States is always talking about, democracy. When it happens and it goes in another direction where the United States isn't happy, that's a bad thing.
Well, it's a good thing, and George Bush set in motion the Arab Spring by what he did in Iraq, because that touched off the Arab Spring, but that doesn't mean you can't manage the process. As Commander-in-Chief in America, you've got to manage this process. You have to protect our allies. When you invest billions and billions in someone like Mubarak, you don't just wake up one morning and say, well, we're getting rid of him.
What George W. Bush tipped off was 2 unpaid-for wars that we're still suffering for to this day. And all the spending that we've put there, rebuilding those countries now that were imploded economically and socially and physically, now we should be investing that money here at home instead of on defense and foreign misadventures around the country.
Couple points.
Like apparently people like you and George W. Bush and Mitt Romney want to take us into.
Couple of points. The Iraq war worked. If you notice, there was not another 9/11. By putting a large American army in the heart of the Mideast, it essentially calmed the region. If you'll notice, maybe Ryan hasn't, we haven't had another 9/11. Everything's been very secure, and it's secure because of what Bush did. The other thing is, you want to talk about Afghanistan.
Excuse me, what I do know is that I have family in the Middle East, and under George W. Bush, and these are dyed-in-the-wool Republicans. Under George W. Bush, they feared for their safety, and they had to think about how everyone in their community thought about them. And under President Obama, that situation has become a lot better, because the things that our president and our government is doing is not encouraging extremists throughout this world to come and attack us. Are you listening to me?
I'm not. If you listen to the left and the Democratic Party,
that's the problem with Republicans. You don't listen to anybody. You just do whatever you want. How's that working out for you?
Don't pay attention to me. Pay attention to the left and the Democratic Party. They have blamed Obama for broadening the Afghan war. Obama took the Afghan war way beyond where
Obama ended the war in Iraq.
He ended the war in both places after he broadened the war in Afghanistan far beyond what George Bush would have ever done.
How did George W. Bush, what was his record? He created 2 wars that he didn't pay for that we're stuck in now, and President Obama got us out of the war in Iraq. He's getting us out of the war in Afghanistan.
Iraq was, I think, a very, very successful initiative. You know it is because you don't hear about it on the nightly news in the United States anymore.
But wouldn't you say Iraq tilts more towards Iran now than they did prior to Saddam Hussein falling?
Yeah, there are problems with it. I think Iranian influence is strengthened. There's no question about it. And it's not perfect. It's a lot better than it was. And I think you had a situation with Saddam where you had a cancer in the heart of the Mideast. I think you had the Mideast was radical. Everything was kind of bursting out, and the region needed to be calmed down. And Bush did that.
Well, what you have now is a breeding ground for terrorists and foreign misadventures for people like you to go and make a profit, I guess, off of selling arms around the world or selling weapons around the world.
I don't sell any arms.
Or being war profiteers and working for defense contractors. I mean, that might sound great to you, and more defense spending might make sense from that perspective. But what we need to be doing is building up our nation here at home. We need to do some nation building here, not around the world.
Okay, let me pick up on what you're talking about, because 46 million people live in poverty here in the United States. That's larger than the entire population of Canada, Finland, and Norway put together. There are a lot of concerns about a Romney presidency with Paul Ryan, the architect of his budget, and a lot of the issues Ryan's already brought up, about kind of dismantling the social safety net here in the United States. Would that happen under a Romney presidency?
Well, I hope it will, because the social safety net has grown by a factor of about 300 under Obama, and that's the last thing we need is more of a social safety net. So yes, the safety net will be dismantled to some degree. The only way to pull people
those people living in poverty is just...
No, the only way to pull them out of poverty is to get the economy to rise, and that's to get the government out of the economy. Welfare, I mean, these people are going to grow out the welfare state in the United States to levels that exceed Europe. If you 4 more years of Obama, we're going to look like Spain. I mean, it's frightening. You see what's going on in Europe, and as we see what's going on over there, I just don't know why anyone would want to replicate it here.
Ryan.
Well, I think what we have to do is keep the commitments that we've made. And we've said to seniors in this country, we said if you pay into this program, then you're going to be taken care of. This is insurance against old age. You know, when you invest in Social Security, when you pay that bill every week, into Medicare, you should get that money back. And those programs work.
I agree.
And people love those programs.
So
why would we want to cut those programs?
Who's cutting them?
Why would we want to cut Social Security?
Who's cutting
Paul
them?
Ryan wants to cut them. Paul Ryan wants to cut
Paul
Medicare.
Ryan's not- no,
Paul
it's
Ryan wants to,
total
excuse me,
misconception.
Paul Ryan wants to take that program and turn it into a voucher program and give elderly people in this country a coupon instead of a guarantee that they'll get the medical care that they need.
Ryan's very confused. These programs eventually will both go broke unless action is taken. Ryan's actually the only one in either party, and most Democrats acknowledge this, including people like Bill Clinton, who has a concrete plan to deal with any of this. You've got to do a number of things to save Social Security.
I can give you a concrete plan right now.
You've got to raise the
I can give you a
retirement
concrete
age.
plan right now.
A number
Jack,
of things need
if you
to
want to
happen.
hear it.
What's the plan?
There's $100 billion every year that we don't collect in corporate income taxes. Used to represent 30% of the budget, now it represents 7%. So what we need to do is we need to make sure everybody pays their fair share in this country, including the top 1%, including the wealthiest on Wall Street. And when we do that, what we're going to do is have enough money to make sure that our government is solvent. If you want to run a government, you got to raise revenue. And so it's a question of where it comes from. I pay my taxes. Do you?
Yes. If
Do you pay your taxes?
Of course.
Great. Well, then everybody else should too, including the top 1%, including Mitt Romney, who
all,
pays 10% and keeps his money in foreign tax
Okay, we're
havens.
talking about 6 issues at once. If you look in the United, for your international audience, if you look at the U.S., the wealthy, if you look at the top 5%, we can quibble over the numbers, but the top 5% of people in the United States pays almost all of the federal tax in the country. If you take this system in the direction he wants, what you will have is a system where about 300 million Americans simply eat, sleep, and exist for their own purposes and really contribute nothing in terms of taxes to the system.
Ryan, I'll give you a last word on this and we're going to move on.
Well, I would ask what value Wall Street is creating for the system as you speak of right now, because I know a lot of people that work in a store or work in a small business, who work as a teacher, or work as a cop, or work as a firefighter, that actually put value in, and then they go out and they spend money in small businesses and in their communities, and that creates demand, and that's how our economy works. But what you have right now is people on Wall Street just sucking money out and not putting any value in, and then they're not paying their taxes like everyone else.
Jack, Ryan, we're going to leave it there. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank
I know
you,
you'll
Mike.
be glued to the set and watching the election
We
coverage
will. We shall.
here on CCTV.
Thanks for having us.